And now, there we go. We are entering now in chapter 5. It is, I would say, the most political chapter of today's of the second day of the Balkans and the Black Sea Forum. This is under the title Global Convulsions and their impact on the Balkans and the Black Sea region. This specific chapter is, we have the honor to have with us Ambassador Angelina Eichhorst, the Managing Director Europe from the European External Action Service. We have Professor Spyridon Flogaitis, the President from the European Public Law Organization. We have Ambassador Poriazov, the ambassador from Bulgaria, who is coming instead of Mr. Daniel Mitov because of some latest developments in Bulgaria, where Ambassador will tell us about. And we have also Mr. Jim Morris, the political counselor from the Embassy of the United States of America. The panel will be moderated by Ambassador Christidis, co-chair of the organizing committee of the Balkans and the Black Sea Forum. And only to say that upon conclusion of the specific chapter, then we have the final session, which is the moderators panel, where all moderators will discuss the outcomes of these 2 days event. So, Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yannis. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Balakakis already said, this will be some sort of a political panel, in the sense that when we started planning this event, being also an ardent supporter of regional cooperation, regional economic cooperation, we focused on panels that would exactly promote the regional economic cooperation among the states of the Balkans and the wider Black Sea. Unfortunately, in the meantime, you all know that the war started in Ukraine, and of course we cannot hide our heads in the sand. This is a war with tremendous consequences, not only for the two countries directly involved, not only for the wider region, but I think also for all our small globe. Because if nothing else, we also have this danger of escalation looming over the head of all mankind. So we are very happy that we have the distinguished panelists with us today in order to discuss this issue, and of course mainly focus on how this war is affecting the Balkan and Black Sea region, but not only. So let me say 2 words about our first speaker, Ambassador Angelina Eichhorst, whom I thank myself also very much for being today with us. Ambassador Eichhorst is the European Foreign Service Managing Director Europe since September 2021. Before that, she held very important mandates as the Acting Managing Director for Europe and Central Asia, the Deputy Managing Director and Director for Western Europe, Western Balkans and Turkey, and also the Chief Negotiator of the EU-facilitated Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, which can give us also a very important perspective in what goes on in the Balkan region. Since 1996, Mrs. Eichhorst has served with the European Union at different external relations directorates. She was in Brussels, in Jordan, in Syria. She was the EU ambassador in Lebanon, and she also worked in Egypt, Somalia, and New York with the private sector, with the United Nations, with research institutes and other non-governmental organizations. Despite her German name, Miss Eichhorst is Dutch. She was born in the Netherlands, and we are really very honored to have you with us, Mrs. Ambassador, and we're looking forward to your first speech on the subject. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Michael. I will... Thank you very much, Michael, Yanni, for the organizers, those present here, and thank you for this very kind introduction. Sometimes you listen and you say, is this about me? But yes, it is true that we have a very long experience in the institutions. Although I must say, I always say I'm European, who happened to be born in the Netherlands, because I feel obviously European by heart and in mind. I'm very pleased to be in this fantastic city. I will come back to Pericles later because it always inspires me when I'm in Athens. As you know, many know, I come very often, as much as I can, to this part of Europe, which is indeed an important bridge to everything we discuss today, Southeast Europe, into the Baltic Sea, Turkey, and I'll come back to all these points. As policymakers, if we really want to protect and advocate the values we promote everywhere, we need new ideas. We need constantly to try new ways of working. So I was very happy to listen also yesterday to the interventions. I have a few takeaways also from this morning, very inspiring session, thank you, to take back to Brussels and to basically take to all our interlocutors. But I have to, and as you said, Michael, we will have to have a little bit more of the politics in this session. So the common foreign security policy, the common defense policy, which is all in the remit of my boss, High Representative Josep Borrell, the work we are doing on a daily basis in Brussels, and which is very much now, very much focused around the war on the continent. So I have a long version and I have a short version. I will stick to the short version for the sake of time. But I will always be told afterwards, why didn't you mention this, and why didn't you mention this country, and what we did here, and what we did there. Forgive me for if I have left out, but I'm very open to the questions afterwards. Both versions, short and long, they have the same introduction. Brussels today, and many of our capitals, and I'm glad to be here also with the colleagues on the panel, it is all about our full continued support to Ukraine, 1. Our continued isolation of Russia, 2. This is about who's the aggressor, who is the aggressed. This is about upholding United Nations Charter, international law, stability on the continent, including the Western Balkans, the Black Sea region, Central Asia, whole Eurasia. And thirdly, it is all the global work that is needed to mitigate the impact of the war in terms of all the discussions we had, energy supplies, food supply chains, connectivity, I will come back to that, and generating a far better understanding of what is really happening and what we are trying to do. So it's a lot about foreign information manipulation and interference. It is really about protecting our democracies, our security, our citizens. And I would add also, of course, protecting that possible fatigue which comes in, how to keep the motivation and the energy going, the action at the highest levels, at political and at community, individual level. We are, after all, in Athens. Pericles, the first citizen of Athens. Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it. We need to have the courage to defend what we stand for. So, in being in the midst of this truly Russian aggression, illegal, unjustified, unprovoked war, it is right that we talk about convulsions, although convulsion is a medical term. We use it politically. But medically, you would say, if you would be a medical doctor, what do you do first? You make sure that the person who is affected, or the entity, or whatever it is safe. Safety and security is your first parameter when any unexpected attack, basically, happens. A safe environment, stabilizing the environment, and then looking at what kind of medication can be applied. And this is something we need to do together. Because in this area where, in fact, our values, but in particular also the multilateral system, and I look at my colleagues who represent the United Nations, we are all United Nations after all, right? We are all United Nations. We are all the international system. We are all a rules-based system we need to defend. There, I think we need to be very, very strong together. And this is basically the work that is happening 24/7. Might does not make right. That's what my boss, the High Representative, said from day one. At the war, at the start of the war, unjust wars are doomed to be lost. Yet the ones who really, really lose out on all of this, it's people, it's citizens, it's their rights, it's human rights. I can tell you there's a lot of determination in Brussels and across the EU. It's mind-boggling. It's huge. The machine does not stop, 24/7. Basically, working as much as we can to face those geopolitical challenges you have been discussing here today. But it also shows that about the EU, there is a truth that perhaps we had lost sight of in all these decades after the Second World War. And the truth is that where people look for political and economic security and the freedom, that is what the EU is. That is what we enshrine. And that is what the Union was created for in the first place. And we saw this when Ukraine immediately applied for membership, immediately after the invasion, second day after. Done. I worked many years on our relationship with Ukraine, with Moldova, Georgia, with the Eastern partners. Membership was not on the table then. It was everything but membership. Now we are in a very, very different ballgame. We have 10 partners, 10 countries lined up to join the European Union. Because people ask to be part of the family. It's a request from people. It's a request from citizens. Talk to people in the Balkans. I mean, I spent so much time there. I see the representative here from Kosovo. You will say 94% of the people want to be part and member of the European Union. This is huge. These are requests we are getting. This is not imperialism. This is not occupying. The policy of enlargement is not the policy of occupying other countries. We actually have all these requests coming in we need to tailor for. And these are a lot of discussions we had previously on what enlargement really is, how it works. I will not go into it. We heard yesterday a session on enlargement. I'm very happy to go deeper in questions, but for now, I want to focus a little bit more on bringing together the different, the different discussions we had. And what are the two sides of all of this, particularly when it comes to the Black Sea region? Security is more challenging, but there are a lot of opportunities. And you listed them yesterday in the panels. And I think we have to somehow tailor on this better. What are the real opportunities? And here we have connectivity, the connectivity agenda of the EU. It's really the new imperative, diversifying energy, transport, we heard. All of this makes the Caucasus, the Black Sea, the whole region, a hub, a true hub for energy and connectivity between Europe and Asia. And this gives actually the Black Sea a totally new geostrategic angle. It's important for us also, I'm just repeating back to also what we need to absorb better in our own systems back in Brussels. but we need your help to do so. And if I then go back to CFSP and CSDP, these are regions that suffer from really long-standing protracted conflicts, Moldova, the 3 South Caucasus countries. And there we need a new impetus to seek the peaceful solutions, the opportunities provided by connectivity in particular, and I'll come back to that. Once the war is over in Ukraine, it will become, in one way or another, an integral part of this new regional landscape. Some talk about the new security architecture for Europe. We are working on that. There's a lot out there that is being done because it needs to be done. And here, we will need to lock the most part of the Black Sea in this embrace of countries who really wish to deeper integrate with the EU. And we are ready to do that. Only this week, we had the foreign ministers of the Eastern partners in Brussels. We had a huge step ahead on enlargement with the candidate status for Bosnia-Herzegovina. Leaders, they will decide on it tomorrow, Wednesday, yeah, tomorrow officially. Fingers crossed always, but this will go well. I was very happy to see the president here yesterday. She was rightly happy too. It's a big step. Having enlargement inclusions is already a big step in our institutions and what we could do with the Western Balkans ahead, but also with the Eastern partners. And we have focused a lot recently on Central Asia, including the Black Sea. What do we do mostly, briefly, today? And what do we need to tap into? It's the global gateway. Sunday evening was the first board meeting of the Global Gateway in Brussels with High Representative Borrell. It was chaired by the President of the Commission. Here we have 300 billion euro investment ready to be mobilized by 2027. I can throw many figures at you. I don't want to do that because it will be just what are we doing in the digital sector, Trans-Balkan electricity corridor, energy sector. A lot was mentioned yesterday, but it's huge what's out there. Transport corridors, and we mentioned it between North Macedonia, Bulgarian border. The ambassador may say something. It's huge, also in the health, in education. When it comes to Balkans and southeastern neighborhood, we have together with the institutions, we have mobilized to date 14 billion from the 77 billion out there in total investments between now and 2027. It means that we are actually not just deepening the work, but we're having far more resources ready to work right up front. And we do that with the private sector. Now I also want to make the link to this morning because it was a very important session. Global Gateway, as I said, we talk about 300 billion, right, to leverage. The money, the point is, where does the money really reach the people who need it most? We know all of that. This is very important. But it's also very important to make sure that in the work we do with the private sector, and it's relatively easy for the European Union to work with the private sector. We are used to doing that. We discussed it a bit yesterday. But what is not yet, what has not yet dribbled down is that we are people-focused interventions, actions, and that we need to work across the institutions with all respect, yes, on gender, but we already work much broader on gender and diversity, because the diversity agenda is very big for the European Union too. It all goes together. But it is very important to have it on the top of everybody's agenda, and not at the very end of every action plan and every agenda. It should be number one. People-focused, based on creating the opportunities for gender and diversity, number one. I have, and then I will stop, a few takeaways from the sessions. First, we need to double up our work. Western Balkans, Turkey, Black Sea, Central Asia. We have the money, the tools, and the instruments, but we don't have enough of the networks of people And I think I want to link it back to what Ms. Eleni Mariano said yesterday. What we need much more in the institutions is the informality. And I bring forward the informality. It came up a few times, because very often we sit in very stiff institutional setups, and there's not enough discussion, not enough exchange. And here I want to link it to the last meeting we had in Prague, the first and the so far last, but there will be many more, of the European political community. 44 leaders came to Prague to discuss informally. And everybody was saying, but what is this EPC? Is it a new organization? No, it is in fact a real occasion for leaders to meet informally. And it did lever, at that point, it was Armenia, Azerbaijan, some of you who have actually followed it, that gave this opportunity to work further. I mean, it's very challenging. The whole question around Armenia, Azerbaijan, I will not go to in here. It keeps us very, very busy. But it is important that leaders meet informally as much as they can. And that's why after the first Prague EPC meeting, there will be the next one in Chisinau, and then there will be a next one organized by Spain, and then by the United Kingdom, and perhaps further. But this is one, the informality of the work and all the channels, keeping constantly all the channels open. Second, and this is also mentioned yesterday by Ms. Eleni, it is the deeper work with the maritime regions. And I say this because there is one region that does not have as yet the full attention, and we try to work from it from within a lot on, is the East Med region, Eastern Mediterranean region. And I linked this to the intervention by Ambassador Burak Özergergin when he made this reference to Greece, Italy, and later on it was big in the press afterwards. But what I'm trying to say is the Eastern Mediterranean regional approach. If you take the coastal partners, we are all fully aware of the problems. We've been working on this quite intensely in the institutions for some time. But let's look further than there is Egypt, Cyprus, Greece, Israel, for sure. There's also Turkey, Lebanon, the Palestinian Authority, and this is a huge basin with huge potential. And somehow all the interests are not being brought together. Now, everybody will say, yeah, but the politics hampers this. It's impossible. I never say that it's impossible in our work. Today we saw the Lebanon-Israel agreement on maritime borderlines. Thank you for the United States, for Amos being very, very consistent on this. And that is important, the consistency, and still trying to advance where we do see the opportunity for people to come together and link up. So I believe this is what the European Union is all about, the linkages, the action, the energy in it, and defending what we stand for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. I'm sure that this very important address has given birth to many questions by the audience, and we will be looking forward to receiving them. I just want to underline what you first said, that you are a European who happened to be born in Holland. And as we are in Athens, let me say that Socrates was one of the first who said something similar, that he's neither a Hellene or an Athenian. He is a citizen of the world. And this is what we should stick to. Thank you for reminding us of that. I will now give the floor to, let me say, logistical reasons, to Professor Spyros Flogaitis. Professor, first of all, thank you for being with us, accepting our invitation. It's a great pleasure and honor having you on this panel. Dr. Flogaitis is the president of the European Public Law Organization, and he is at the same time a professor of administrative law at the Law School of the University of Athens. He is an attorney at law at the High Court and at the Council of State of Greece. He is a former president of the United Nations Administrative Tribunal and former caretaker alternate minister for foreign affairs in 2015, former caretaker minister of interior in Greece, and many, many other attributes and qualifications with which I will not bother the audience, Professor. Excuse me for that. Let me just say that Dr. Flogaitis holds his PhD in law from the University of Paris 2 and a PhD in history from the University of Paris 1. So, Professor, you have the floor either from where you are sitting or from the podium if you wish. So.
Thank you very much, Ambassador and dear President, for your kind words. As you have understood, I'm a law professor and who happens also to direct an international organization, actually the only international organization proposed to the world by Greece, and I'm very honored for that. And thank you very much for giving me the floor, dear Ambassador. Actually, I was taken by surprise to take the floor at this time and not later. I always like to take my time listening to others and repositioning my intervention, but anyway, I'm very happy to be here, and please allow me to thank, first of all, the organizers and for the kindness to invite me and to be here with you today and to become part of this family for which I would like to congratulate you for having created it. The theme of our meeting in this chapter 6 brings me to the heart of the roadmap on which the European Public Law Organization is based, because being an international organization with headquarters in Athens, Greece, the southeastern part of the European Union, the European Public Law Organization, the EPLO, gave first priority into bringing in the organization the countries, the neighboring countries, the first priority to the countries of the Balkans, and at the same time the countries of the Black Sea region. We are still waiting for Turkey to decide to join in, and we hope that this will happen at their earliest convenience. This strategy of the EPLO to bring in the countries of the region and including the Black Sea into a European public law organization, together with countries of the European Union and perhaps and hopefully beyond, this strategy is due to the fact that we believe that that Europe of the future, the European Union of the future, will be not so close to what created or to what it is or it was the European Union, or what it was in those days, of the 6 or of the 10, not even of the 27, because the enlargement to the Balkans and to the Black Sea, I mean to countries which do not have common history with what brought together Germany and France after the Second World War, will produce another Europe. And I would say, Ambassador, that the European Union of the present should be ready for that. And you will tell me when Greece came into the European Union of the, whatever it was, of the 10, nothing changed. Yes, but Greece is a very, very special case. And you have here a country which believes, and perhaps it is, that it is the heart of Europe, and we like to be there and to contribute to the development of this Europe. But Ambassador, when Greece joined in 1980-81 the European Union, it was the first time after the division of the Roman Empire in Eastern and Western that Greece belonged to the same political family with the countries of the Western world. Now you understand how things will change in the future. And global convulsions and their impact on the Balkans and the Black Sea region. Interesting is that the convulsions are more from the Balkan and the Black Sea region and their impact on the rest of the world, because, ladies and gentlemen, we are having a war, and a war which is which has its repercussions all over the globe. We have events all over the globe which perhaps they are connected with what was created as a new reality by an aggression against a sovereign country in the Black Sea region. And this reminds us that perhaps through what we are experiencing today in the Black Sea region, something which did not come just by coincidence. It is the result of similar events which happened before. Never forget what happened to Georgia. Never forget what happened to Moldova and Transnistria. Those are preludes of what is happening in the most brutal way into a sovereign country, which actually is also bound to have all the war in their territory, but not out of that of their territory. Very, very intelligent way of understanding a war. And the result of this war and the result of the repercussions which this war will have in the wider region will mark once and forever the future of Europe and the future of the world. I was thinking many times in what is happening in Ukraine today. And my mind never forgets the case of Friuli Venezia Giulia. Do you remember Friuli Venezia Giulia? Friuli Venezia Giulia is what the Austrians call Südtirol. You remember that that part of the world was for a period of time Austrian. After the collapse of the Serenissima Repubblica di Venezia in 1797 with Campo Formio, not much later, this part of the world became Austria. And Imperial Austria ruled it, and Imperial Austria eventually never forgets that it ruled it. However, we had the Second World War, and at the end of the Second World War, there was a problem. Would we respect the territorial integrity of Italy? Now, a special regime was foreseen for the region Friuli Venezia Giulia, one of the richest regions of Italy, and thanks to that special regime, the territorial integrity of Italy was saved, and the territorial integrity of Italy was preserved. Perhaps if you follow the Italian political life, you will see that from time to time Italy protests because Austria continues from time to time, from what I understand, I don't know if it is true, giving Austrian passports to the Italians of what they call the Tyrol. Anyway, we need to have a new reality of peace and respect of everybody in the Black Sea. And I do hope that with the end of the war, which fatally will come at some time, all the problems, all the aggressions in the region will be forgotten, and everyone's territorial integrity will be respected. The EPLO has the honor to have among its member countries in the Black Sea region, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, and about a month ago, Ukraine joined officially by decision of the parliament. They ratified the treaty of the EPLO, and they are the new member of our community. And at the beginning of September, I had the honor to lead a small delegation of the EPLO to Kiev to present our good wishes and solidarity to the fighting nation. So I believe that this war and this uneasiness in the wider area of our study here and discussion, the Balkans and the Black Sea region, will bring new realities and in Europe, and I do hope, and I am looking forward for a Europe better rooted and better developing from one part to the other of the continent. I keep saying that, and I will conclude with that, that very often we talk about Western and Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and but it is good never to forget that those are territorial adjectives to the word Europe. There is only one Europe, what we call Western Europe, to what we all belong, no matter if territorially we live here and there. We belong to the same civilization, to the same way of thinking, to the same values which we developed through the centuries in that continent, and which we're bringing together, all of us together today, to the rest of the world in a dialogue of civilizations to manifest that we are Europeans. And dear Ambassador, it says here, European Public Law Organization, Greece. Greece are the headquarters. Greece is the mother country, but we are an international organization. We belong to every one of us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor. And of course, I want to congratulate you on the establishment, but also on the work of the European Public Law Organization that you have. You are the father of it. You know, you made a very interesting territorial observation that the global convulsions we are talking in the title of this panel are actually convulsions started in this territory and of course have global repercussions. And of course this brings us back to this old, let me say, proverb about the Balkans being the powder keg of Europe, or another quote which is erroneously attributed to Churchill, that the Balkans produce more history than they can, let's say, consume. And I always, being a Balkan myself, I always paraphrase that in that the Balkans suffer more great power intervention than they can possibly endure. And this is, after all, a great power, let's say, intervention happening, not in the Balkans, but in the wider Black Sea region. Thank you for bringing this up. Mr. Valakakis, I proceed with our American colleague. Okay. Okay. So our next speaker is Mr. Jim Morris, who is the political counselor of the Embassy of the United States here in Athens since August 2022. Before that, he was the deputy director in the Office of Russian Affairs at the State Department in Washington. He began his career, his State Department career, in 2004, serving in very, very interesting places like Moscow, Frankfurt, Bishkek, Tbilisi, as well as in Afghanistan. But what I find very interesting is also that before joining the State Department, Mr. Morris was a Peace Corps volunteer in Russia, in Khabarovsk, and also worked for the American consuls in Odessa, in the Ukraine. So in both countries, so much involved in the war taking place today. So we are looking forward to hearing your address, Mr. Morris, please.
Thank you, Ambassador Christidis, and as you can, it was a really nice introduction, and as you can see, most of my experiences in the former Soviet Union, beginning with my time as a Peace Corps volunteer in Russia, which on a day like today feels like a very long time ago. Not just chronologically, but also in terms of the shape of history and the change of events. So, it was very nice to speak with Ambassador Dandua on the break between sessions. And the first time I ever heard of the term Black Sea security was in Tbilisi, and Georgia was a real leader on this topic following the Wales Summit in 2014. In terms of really highlighting the threat that Russia represented to the Black Sea. And NATO was responding at that time, and Georgia had a lot of proposals. But I think the current, the new war has really accelerated that. So for those of you who were here yesterday, you heard my colleague Eric Holmgren speak more on energy and economic issues. So my remarks today will focus more on the security side of things and the political dimension. So 2022 is the 75th anniversary of the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan, and we have celebrated that with our friends and partners here in Greece. And these were two really seminal events in the formulation of the U.S. response to the threat of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the Cold War, which is a war that I'm glad to say that we eventually won together. So Russia's war on Ukraine is another similar challenge for the transatlantic relationship. And while the people of Ukraine are suffering the most, the war is testing all of our resolve, and it is a test to our collective values and to global security. So, but we actually have a 4-star general in town today. He's General McConville. He's the Chief of Staff of the Army, and he's here to visit some U.S. troops for the holidays. And when we saw him this morning with our ambassador, he said, "I'm really happy to say that NATO has never been stronger." And I think that's because NATO has risen to the challenge of Russian aggression and emerged more united. The United States has provided $7 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, and other allies in the region, including Greece, are making significant contributions, including lethal assistance to Ukraine, and we welcome their support. the United States told Putin that his actions would draw a worldwide response from our democratic allies and partners, and it has. The Biden administration is committed to placing allies and alliances, especially NATO, at the center of U.S. foreign policy, and we're actively working to ensure that they reflect and respond to the current challenges. In that spirit, we'll continue to strengthen the alliance's capacity to address all threats to transatlantic security, including terrorism, the malign use and emergence of disruptive technologies, cyber and hybrid operations, and other challenges to the international order that I think are particularly acute here in the Balkans and in the Black Sea region. We'll continue to protect critical infrastructure and develop energy security, which again was addressed mostly by my colleague yesterday. Turning more to the Black Sea and the Balkans, these regions have made tremendous progress, moving from conflict to peace, cooperative development, and towards stronger democracies with stronger security and defense postures. NATO has substantially reinforced its presence in the Black Sea region and is increasing the number of high readiness forces across the alliance to well over 300,000 troops. After the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014, we have implemented a stronger enforcement of our collective defense, especially in the Black Sea region, as I mentioned earlier. And we now have what we call enhanced vigilance activities that are helping the allies monitor and be more present in the Black Sea region. When NATO realized that Russia was planning a full-fledged invasion on Ukraine last fall, we further added to our presence in the Black Sea region, including at the MK Air Base in Romania. Additionally, in the Black Sea, we see that the UN and Turkey mediated the agreement, which resulted in the shipments leaving Ukrainian ports and the region under the Black Sea Grain Initiative, bringing millions of tons of grain stuck at Ukraine's ports to those facing food insecurity around the world. Turning to the West Balkans, we note other positive developments. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we praised the general elections, which occurred on October 2nd. We appreciate the EU's leadership in EUFOR Althea, and we support the work of High Representative Schmidt to address longstanding power-sharing problems resulting from the Dayton Accords. Returning to Serbia and Kosovo, we agree that with the EU that recent developments are concerning and put the progress that's been achieved in the EU dialogue at risk. Therefore, we continue to support the EU-facilitated dialogue as the best path to advance Serbia and Kosovo's European future. And we congratulate Albania on achieving the start of its EU accession negotiations in July and remain committed to supporting its transatlantic path. And I would note that Greece has played a helpful role there as well. Together, we're working to combat corruption, organized crime, and to provide energy security as well as cyber defense to Albania, especially following the Iran's destructive cyber attacks in Albania. Last, turning to Greece, we often say that the U.S.-Greece bilateral relationship has never been stronger, and that's true. Greece views cooperation with the United States as vital to its national security and plays a stabilizing role in the Eastern Med and the West Balkans, as I've already mentioned. The Prime Minister was in Washington this May and met with President Biden and gave a historic address to the Congress. Greece was one of the first allies in EU member states to send lethal and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. In May of this year, Greece's parliament ratified the Second Amendment to our Mutual Defense and Cooperation Agreement, and U.S. forces have increased access to ports and bases throughout Greece, including the port of Alexandroupoli. Strategically located in northeastern Greece, the port of Alexandroupoli is vital for the transport of NATO military equipment to counter Russian activities around the world. So in closing, our countries are at the forefront of the struggle between democratic values and tyranny. And as I was coming down here today and thinking about the fact that I was going to the Acropolis Museum, I was also thinking about the fact that I'm only beginning to learn Greek's history, but as I understand it, the development of democracy in Athens essentially occurred after a period of of intense war between the Persian Empire and the Greek city-states. So perhaps we can draw from that lesson, and we'll find that as we emerge from this era, our democracies and our values will only become stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. And now, last but certainly not least, we were to have with us Mr. Daniel Mitov, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bulgaria, but unfortunately there is a very crucial vote taking place today in the Bulgarian parliament, a vote that will decide on the next government of our neighboring country. And as a member of parliament, Mr. Mitov was not allowed to travel abroad. So instead, we have the pleasure and honor of having with us the ambassador of Bulgaria to Greece, Mr. Valentin Poriazov, a very seasoned and experienced Bulgarian diplomat. We are happy and honored to have you with us, Valentin. Mr. Poriazov, Ambassador Poriazov, has held very important and responsible posts in the MFA of Bulgaria. He was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and head of very important departments. He also served as the ambassador of Bulgaria to the Netherlands, to Denmark, and to Sweden, apart from his 3 or more years as the ambassador of Bulgaria to Greece. But of course, most important, he is a close friend for the last 30 years. So, Ambassador Poriazov, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's really a pleasure. And I congratulate you and Mr. Balakakis on organizing this important conference at such a distinguished venue, which should remind us probably of a great European philosopher, a favorite of mine, Søren Kierkegaard, who was European of Danish origin, who said, you can understand life only looking backwards, but you can live your life only looking forward. I'm afraid the regime of Mr. Putin has not read these philosophical studies of Søren Kierkegaard. I'm afraid, and being for a long time fond of political realism, or some call it realpolitics, that we are facing an abyss. And as soon as we understand fully what is happening around us, it will be very difficult to prevent something which may theoretically happen in the future, in the near future. Of course, I was really very much pleased with the expose of Ambassador Eichhorst, being a great fan of the Dutch political philosophy, and of course international law was created in the Netherlands, and as a humble member state we always follow the Commission, because we have selected the Commission in order to work out for us the policies of our European Union. At the same time, being not only a European but also a Bulgarian, it is difficult to escape from our geography, because if you look at the map, you will see that the only 2 European member states that are situated on the Black Sea are Bulgaria and Romania. So it might be a good idea to have our views taken into consideration when we see what to do in the next period. Because in my personal view, the big risk for all of Europe is to get used to the idea that in the very neighborhood of Europe, we might have a war for many years to come. This will be detrimental, I believe, for our future as union, as a community of nations, although some of us are very different from each other. When I was ambassador to the Netherlands, I used to say that there are no more distant countries than Bulgaria and the Netherlands, because they were situated and will continue to be situated on the western part of Europe, and Bulgaria is situated at the very southeastern part of Europe. But at the same time, we have found so many common projects. For example, the Netherlands is the biggest investor in Bulgaria, and this is only one example of it. But you know, I participated in the ratification process of Bulgaria's accession to the European Union, which might have been actually the most challenging time of my professional career. But nevertheless, we have managed to come to a common agreement that we need each other. And of course, this is just a piece of fact. I would not escape to mention that we are very dissatisfied by what happened on the 9th of December regarding the Schengen area, but we and Romania are going to continue to fight for the European unity in that respect, in the justice and home affairs. Because what we need now and what we can do now is to stick together, the European Union member states. What was done regarding Schengen was to the contrary, and I can easily quote the Commissioner for Migration, Ylva Johansson, today in the European Parliament, but because she actually mentioned that the only result of this voting of the Justice and Home Affairs Council would be to the benefit of Putin, I wouldn't go into detail of this story. From the point of view of a Balkan and a Black Sea country, and having in mind what is the title of this session, I believe as a representative of a country which is situated in the very center of the Balkan Peninsula, we have all the Balkan countries, our neighbors, also Turkey, we have our personal and national experience with a war that is taking place just 400 kilometers from our Black Sea shore. We are extremely concerned about the future. We believe that a country which has managed to keep its contacts with Mr. Putin and Russia should be more pressing and instrumental in making Mr. Putin stop this war. We have, for many decades, we have positive relations with Turkey. We are having positive cooperation regarding migration. We are the only country in the region that has land borders with both Greece and Turkey. And from that basis, we believe we have the right to appeal to our Turkish neighbors to be more instrumental in making Mr. Putin stop this war. This may sound a little bit emotional, but I believe, and this is my personal conviction, that we should not forget that we should fight every day and every minute for this war to be stopped. Very regretfully, there is a person on whom we do not have enough influence and on whom the very stop of this war depends, and this is Mr. Putin. I regret to say that I have tried to find in history some analog events similar to those we are witnessing right now in Europe, and it was, I was not able to find anything similar, because, you know, even if you watch on Russian video channels some events in support of this war, my God, I was frightened to see that this is even more frightening than what happened during the Hitler regime. This is, I'm not trying to make definitions, of course, but, you know, Russian people obviously have been very much influenced by this regime. I'm sorry to be so outspoken against this war, but I believe this criminal act of aggression should be stopped, and I believe and I hope that in the future this criminal act should go to international justice. Otherwise, well, when I was ambassador to the Netherlands, actually, Mr. Milosevic was housed in a prison which was 200 meters from my embassy. This is a very prestigious area of The Hague. And this guy, well, we kept following his policies in Yugoslavia against all the other republics, and his aggression against Slovenia, Croatia, and other countries for maybe 2 years. And I was dealing personally with trying to find out how we should stop Mr. Milosevic. And all of a sudden, he found his rightful place in a prison in the capital of international law in The Hague. I wish that all criminal acts of aggression should be judged according to international law, and I hope that all the responsible personalities should find their rightful place sometime in the future. Well, at this point, I would like to quote a very prominent Russian journalist, Muratov, who was the Nobel Peace Prize winner, a journalist from Nezavisima Gazeta, who said on the very first day of the war that it is only the Russian people who can stop this aggression and who can save the world. I'm very much afraid that the Russian people would not be in the position to save the world. We should think of some other ways of trying to find out how we can stop this war. Of course, when the war starts, usually they say that this is the failure of diplomacy. I'm not sure that in this specific case of history, this was a failure of diplomacy, because you cannot address a person of this kind, I mean the leader of Russia, with the instruments of diplomacy. What we can do now is to keep our solidarity together, to keep our unity in the European Union, in order just to try to find a peaceful solution at the very end of this nightmare that we are living in. And I believe this is the only way we can act now. What we are doing now is having a very close cooperation with our neighbors of the European Union in the region, Greece, Romania. The thing is that this work has shown to Bulgaria and Greece how very complementary and mutually dependent our economies are. We are very much looking forward to participating in the construction of LNG terminals on the Aegean Sea, on the Northern Aegean Sea. Also, we are in very close contact with the Greek government on how to use the Greek ports in northern Greece, because for the time being, at least in the midterm, we believe that the future of the Black Sea is a little bit, I mean, the peaceful future is a little bit under question. And I regret to say also that what Mr. Erdogan has done recently by raising the taxes through the Bosphorus for the commercial ships by almost 5 times is not very much helping our cooperation in the economic field. But political realism dictates that we should deal with the circumstances as they evolve before us. So I really hope that together, we will find the way first to stop this war and then to rebuild the future European security architecture. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Ambassador. Very down to the point of the title of this chapter. Unfortunately, looking at the clock, we have 14 minutes for questions. I see already a hand raised, but as I have the prerogative of the moderator, allow me to come up with some questions myself, if I may. The first one goes to Mrs. Eichhorst, because I believe we left out a very important factor in all this global situation and what you called this new security order on which you are working, we should all be working. And this factor is China, which is something that we have to decipher, I think. Although yesterday it was very interesting that the Chinese ambassador to Athens portrayed the latest developments in the relationship between the EU and China in a very favorable way, saying that China understands the role that the EU has to play in this new global order, not only concerning security, but also economy, trade, and so on. So how would you characterize the situation, the relations with Beijing today, when we consider also that Beijing openly avoids to identify with or condone Moscow's war in Ukraine? So this is one question I would very much like to hear what you have to say on that.
Do you want me to come in now? Or you?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And yes, it was good to have this session also yesterday with our partners from China. You asked me how I qualify. The way we qualified is obviously a result of the discussion of member states. We discussed quite extensively China back in October already. And sort of the qualifications, all 27, Bulgaria with us here, China is a partner, is economically, of course, a competitor, and in the end, it's a systemic rival. So this is sort of the 3 areas where we, as European Union, have defined where we are with China today. Open channels at all levels, as you know, President of the Council went as well. But you mentioned something very important. So there's the but part. China is, of course, one of the P5 having a full responsibility for upholding the UN Charter. And this is where we have a lot of discussions with China at this point in time. You were talking about stopping the war. We do truly feel there's a big responsibility on China as well to help stop this war for now. And that is part of the discussion, but it's much bigger than that. I think also we are differently situated than the United States when it comes to China. We have all the economic linkages. We have a long list there. A lot of work ahead, but it is this systemic rivalry, particularly when it comes to technology, science and technology, and all these areas where we do feel that as European Union, we need to be far more independent and more resilient. And that's actually what is happening. In a strange way, the past few months, we have become far more stronger and more united as the European Union. Unfortunately, not on all points, as the ambassador was saying just now, and when it comes to Schengen, but there are many areas where we are fully united in our work on China. So my 2 points are, we have a big debate with a discussion with the United States on our China policy. European Union is differently situated in all of this, but we work very closely with the US. And second is the responsibility for China to uphold the UN Charter.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting, especially what you said, that China should assume a more dynamic role in trying to stop the war. And of course, this is the huge question. How can we stop this war, as it was also a question put forward by Ambassador Poriazov. And there is this recent remarks by President Macron. I know that it has provoked reactions, especially from the Ukraine, but President Macron openly said after his visit to the United States that if and when Putin agrees to start negotiations for ending the war, then the West must consider how to address Russia's security concerns. And of course, we have also this latest article by Chancellor Scholz, where he underlined it is very important that how can we as Europeans and as the European Union remain independent actors in this increasing multipolar world. This is something apart, of course, but taking into account the latest remarks by Macron, and this is a question to all of the panelists who would want to answer to this. How can we bring the protagonists around the table? And when I say protagonists, I don't only mean Russia and Ukraine. I mean also the United States. I mean also the EU. I mean also China. How can we bring all these protagonists around the table to stop this war of attrition, which is nothing more than every day seeing more people killed, more destruction, and unfortunately it has become almost an acceptable everyday reality. And this is happening in Europe. So whoever wants to answer this question, how can we bring all the, let's say, factors around the table to stop this war?
Well, I'll just say that, of course, it's the position of our government to support President Zelensky, and that in terms of how he wants to engage on negotiating towards an end to the conflict. I think what I've seen out of Ukraine is that very high numbers of Ukrainians are willing to continue to prosecute the war. Of course, they want to see the war end, but I think the real question, President Macron's comments are very interesting, but you know, obviously a ceasefire would be welcome, but what's really needed is lasting security. You know, we have seen over the years that Russia says one thing and does another in practice. So if we come to an agreement, some kind of agreement with Russia, how do we know that it will be lasting? And I think the real question from our perspective is, what is the security guarantee for Ukraine? So how can Ukraine feel empowered to negotiate an end to the war and know that 5 days after it signs the agreement, Russia doesn't just attack again? And so I think the solution to that from our perspective is very strong Western support from the United States and from NATO. So if Ukraine knows that we have their back in some form following this agreement, they will feel comfortable coming to terms with their adversary. And I think, as we've all talked about, we've shown, we, the West, have shown that we're collectively willing to do that we will back Ukraine, and hopefully they can negotiate an end to the war on terms that are acceptable to them and give them a lasting stability and peace in their region. So it doesn't address all of your question, but at least some of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have 5 minutes more, so please can we give the microphone to our friend who wants to ask a question to our panelists?
Thank you. My name is David Dondoan. I'm European who happened to be born in Georgia. Let me start by extending our appreciation to the organizers, to Yanis Balakakis and Ambassador Christidis for putting this event together. And I very much appreciate the format, Balkans and Black Sea, putting these two regions together. It's not a question, but rather a comment, if you allow me. We, Georgia, when we got independence in early 90s, from the very beginning, we started to position ourselves as a Black Sea country. Although it took them more than 10 years to get rid of these cliches of former Soviet Union country, or to be called country of South Caucasus, Caspian, Central Asia. Well, geographically it's correct. But politically it was a bit damaging for us because Caucasus was and still is pursued as a Chechnya conflicts, terrorists. Well, we have nothing against Caspian and Asia, but Asia is Asia and not Europe, and we are for Europe. We are opting for Europe. And Jim Morrison recalled 2014 when I myself tabled at North Atlantic Council at Evere 10 proposals how Georgia can contribute to the Black Sea security in the framework of NATO. But promoting and positioning ourselves as a Black Sea country, we started already in the 90s when, together with my colleagues, much earlier, before Three Seas Initiative was formalized, and also much earlier, before Romania and President Basescu brought Black Sea security on a political agenda, we were saying that European security will be finalized when security of Adriatic, Baltic, and Black Seas are finalized. So, Baltics are more or less finished, especially with two remaining countries joining NATO soon, I hope. Most of the dirty job on Adriatics is done, I also hope very much, and it's a matter of time when these countries will become full-fledged members of the security and political structures. Now, what is remaining is the Black Sea. If we look how 20th century and 21st centuries began, there are very striking similarities. Both centuries started with wars. But if in 20th century, ground zero was Balkans, in 21st century, the ground zero is a Black Sea. So, and what we have seen, it took almost 100 years to more or less specify, not more or less, but specify Balkan region, and the most instrumental was perspective of EU, perspective of NATO for the countries of the region. Not all are members already, but they are on their way, and they know what they will get at the end of the game. So we hope that now what was almost impossible to even imagine and hope 1 year ago for countries of our region, of Black Sea region, for Georgia, for Ukraine, for Moldova, now it's a really tangible one, and we hope that EU will take brave decisions on our both NATO and EU endeavors. Madam Ambassador, it was like a music for my ears to hear that you are already in Brussels working on tomorrow's security architecture. Yes, it's the right time because this war will end, I hope rather sooner than later, and tomorrow we will have completely new world, completely new Europe, and we will need new arrangements. What we have lacked in the past, it was a vision on our part of the world, on Black Sea, on Georgia, on Caucasus, on conflict in Georgia. And I have many times said it to particularly your room, to your predecessor, to your former Secretary General, your operations division at PSC, that the only one who has a vision on our part of the world is Master of Kremlin. It wasn't appreciated, of course, in Brussels, but that's how we saw it, and I very much hope that this time, in cooperation with us, with countries of Black Sea, we will have a proper vision for a lasting peace in Europe. And I cannot stop not to responding Professor Flogaitis, whose organization, European Public Law Organization, is doing a tremendous job in Georgia. He said that we are members, and yes, we are proud members. And I want to use this opportunity and thank you, Professor, and your organization for bringing European education, European knowledge, especially on key subjects for an aspiring country like European law and European management. And Professor Flogaitis is the one who always had a right vision on our region, both geographically and politically. So thank you very much, and sorry for my long expose.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting intervention. To tell you the truth, you reminded me a lot about the euphoria that reigned in Europe immediately in the aftermath of the events that took place at the end of the 80s, early 90s, which gave also birth to an organization that is very dear to me because I served it for 6 years, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization. Unfortunately, all these basic wishes, arguments that gave birth to this initial platform, which later became an organization and served our people so well, is very, very, how can I say, foggy right now, and we have arrived where we are. And it is the responsibility of all to take the action that we can in order to change things. I have a question here from, it is from the internet, I suppose, and it's addressed to Mr. Morris. Can you please make a quick presentation of the main topics and objectives of the new US governmental act about sustainability? Could this create new challenges for European Union member states, as many people in Europe mention? Now, this is a question which is a bit out of the...
For the next session of this?
Yes, for the next session, yeah. And as we have...
I support it as legislation passed by our Congress.
And as we have time constraints, we will ask from the person that has posed this question to forgive us. So I don't know if there is anybody else who would like to ask something. Yeah. Fine, sir, I can't see your, there is the light directly in mine.
Thank you for the recognition. I'm Dimitris Vasiliou. I'm a young European federalist. I'd like to first and foremost thank you all for this organization and as well for Eliamep for bringing us here. Thank you for this insightful discussion. Well, yesterday we discussed the enlargement process and this detrimental issue to our European integrational efforts. Last year, we saw the formulation of the strategic compass, and today we discussed about Black Sea security. I'd like to thank and address Madam Ambassador. How wise is to discuss about enlargement process when at the same time we face democracy issues, corruption perhaps even, and if I may, a stalemate when it comes to treaty change in our shared European dream. And in that perspective, I would also like to ask, how would you describe the state of the Union when it comes to strategic autonomy post-Brexit and post the invasion? Thank you very much once again.
Thank you. These are important but big questions, and I will not do like my like Jim, giving you only one sentence, but I'm conscious of time. Look, I think in you have twofold, but the first one I would say it is absolutely pertinent to continue to discuss constantly who we are as European Union, who do we want to be. You heard it also from the panel here, but taking account of what's happening on the south and east flank, but also, you know, my work is a lot with the members of the European Economic Area, our Norwegian friends, Iceland. I have the Faroe Islands who come to us. We should never forget there is Monaco, Saint-Marin, there is Andorra. There are many partners who vote in the United Nations with us, right? Who stand with us on the principles we are having and who make very clear this is one Europe. Even the United Kingdom says we are one Europe, okay? And maybe not European Union, but and of course EU-UK relations for the moment I will park it because it would take a long time. My point to you would be we have to constantly, and this is the beauty of the European Union, the change, the transition we have ourselves, the dynamics of the work internally. It's so fast, it's huge, and this is actually, I think this is the attraction we have to others who want to join because they want to be part of this. So enlargement, I will always argue, it's our most successful foreign policy. And it is slow, you know, I know all the issues around the whole process. We can discuss it many times. I'm always ready for that. But in the end, it is our most successful policy because, and we heard it again today, how this has transformed ourselves too. And it's very true what you said about the Netherlands. The Dutch people know so little about Bulgaria. I know this from myself, you know, why, how is it not possible that we are much more together in understanding each other? Because, and we will have to have that continuous reflection of how can we be together. So I would describe today the European Union as a very strong alliance, a very strong alliance. I think we have never been more united than before, and I don't say it because I'm a Eurocrat. I say it because I see this every day. The discussions we are having and the decisions we are making, it is truly mind-boggling. But where will it bring us to the future? Will we be ready to have this European architecture, as the ambassador of Georgia was saying? I hope we will, because we need it. Our first and foremost is always, in any situation, you need to have security. But then, we are the European Union, we need to deliver for the people. It's the people that count in the end, right? And that is why I'm so proud to be European, because I believe that is important in all the work we are doing.
Thank you, Madam. So we have to keep the timetable because the guided tour of the museum, we cannot postpone that. So with what you described as the beauty of the EU, impersonated by you, Mrs. Eichhorst, hoping that this attraction and beauty of the EU, together with other factors, will help bring the end to what we are witnessing today, which was also the title of our chapter. I wish to thank all of you again for your very valuable and important contributions to this exchange of views and ideas, and hope to see you again at the next session of the Balkans and Black Sea Forum. We have now, Mr. Balakakis, please correct me if I'm wrong, we have now to ask the moderators, well, after we take, of course, the family photo of this panel, but we have to ask the moderators to inform us, take the floor and inform us on the 2, 3, 4 conclusions that they have formed after the work of their panels, which, as we said also in writing, these conclusions will be put under the consideration of the governments of all states in the regions concerned, and why not also under the government of Brussels, the EU. So thanks again to all of you. Let us please have the family photo, and then we proceed with the meeting of the moderators.